strikes. Katie.
All right, Trent, thank you for that live report this morning. And for more reaction, let's bring in retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel and co-founder of Restore Liberty, Darren Gobb. Also with us, national security analyst for the Capital Research Center, Ryan Mauro. Thank you for being with us on Sunday Report. We appreciate you. Colonel Gobb, I want to start with you. What does the toppling of the Assad regime mean for Syria? That's a big question. And how will Assad's fall from power impact stability in the region?
Yeah, that's definitely the question of the day, and for the coming weeks, to be sure. The challenge will be in Syria that there are a lot of people who look at this as being unburdened from tyranny, and in many ways they're right. They've suffered under the thumb of the Assads for a long time, and so where that goes will be critical to understanding the future of Syria. The struggle for power within the country itself, who takes predominance, does it split into multiple different sectors across the country? That is too early to tell, but there is a risk here that it could actually get worse than what it was before. But for now, the people are seeing a chance for freedom. But who's watching this closely and should be watching this closely is the regime in Tehran, because they used to control Syria, but because of their actions in their attacks against Israel, the weakness they've demonstrated, their ineffectiveness in attacking Israel, and their inability to control the things they used to be able to control throughout the Middle East is in question now, and puts the mullahs and that despotic regime in Tehran on alert. And that's the next thing we need to be watching closely.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a quick follow-up, Colonel, before I get to Ryan. This group, HTS, tell me a little bit about your knowledge of that group and kind of who they are and what you might expect to come from them.
HTS, if you were to put it in a language that people in America understand clearly, would be an Al-Qaeda affiliate who acts a lot like them. And so in the end, what you've got is ISIS in a form of resurgence again in Syria. And if that happens, then my concern would be elevated for what the direction that Syria goes. So that's the thing to watch closely too, is if that group becomes predominant in Syria, what you could have is something that looks a lot like Afghanistan pre-9/11.
Yeah, it's really valuable to have us on the air, have you on the air with us this morning, Colonel, to talk about that. Ryan, we watched Taliban insurgents seize power in Afghanistan back in 2021, bringing the country back under the rule of religious extremists there. Let's talk about the rebel forces that are toppling the al-Assad regime. As the Colonel was mentioning, this is a new day for Syria, but it's also, what the president and others have called catastrophic success. How do you view this?
Sure, it's a very risky success. Strategically, I think it's undoubtedly a gain for Israel, the United States, and the good guys, because you're taking what was a nation-state threat that was essentially part of Iran, and in the worst-case scenario, changing it from Iran to something more like Somalia on Israel's border, where you have a bunch of different militant groups preoccupied with fighting each other as opposed to fighting the Israelis. And that pales in comparison, I think, from the Israeli perspective, to having the Shiite crescent of the Iranian regime stretching all the way over to its border. But that also, this new environment, though, does present many challenges. For example, just as was mentioned, HTS is essentially Al-Qaeda. I mean, the reason that they're not Al-Qaeda is just because so many Syrian groups didn't like Al-Qaeda and wouldn't work with them, so they said, okay, fine, we're not Al-Qaeda. And then that they're able to build this coalition and get more popularity. So this is Al-Qaeda with social skills, basically. But that's the group that's getting the most attention because they're obviously leading the fight, leading the way into Damascus. But there are many, many rebel groups. In the south, there's a certain coalition that includes over a dozen groups that have worked with the Israelis. In the north and actually the east, and then stretching over closer to the south, are the Syrian Democratic Forces that have long worked with the United States. That is largely Kurdish-led, but its forces are about half Sunni Arab and also has a Christian component. And they've been our best ally on the ground. They control most of the oil and gas. So there are alternatives for Syria's future to this essential branch of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like how you sum that up. They're kind of like, they have better marketing, but a similar group. Colonel Gobb, President-elect Trump is speaking out on the situation. Earlier today, he posted this on Truth Social. Assad is gone. He has fled his country. His protector, Russia, was not interested in protecting him any longer. Trump also posted on Truth Social yesterday saying the following: Syria is a mess, but it is not our friend, and the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved! Exclamation point at the end of that. How do you see the incoming Trump administration dealing with the chaotic situation there? You know, and Ryan alluded to this, but we have been backing a secular group in Syria for some time now. What do you think the president needs to do, or maybe not do, when he comes into office very soon?
Well, first of all, if they're not already gone by the time he comes into office, he needs to assess the security of our forces who are already sitting on the ground in Syria and determine whether or not they should stay there. My concern right now is their safety and security first and foremost. Second of all, the best person to work through when it comes to, I guess, the picture in general throughout Syria, or two people to work through. One of them is get behind Israel and their security situation and make sure they are equipped as necessary, regardless of what that looks like, to secure their own borders, especially near the Golan Heights. That is a place they've already moved across the border and secured some locations to make sure that these rebel forces don't come trickling into the Golan and into Syria. Second of all would be to address this through Turkey. Turkey is a NATO member, and it's an interesting problem with Turkey because they are a NATO member, but they're still a kind of a Russian ally. And to get to the point about the Kurds, that's Turkey's one of their major concerns is that Kurdish force, and that's been true for a long time. I've served in Turkey. I know how they think about them. That would be a great avenue to be able to reach a significant amount of the population in northern Syria. Would be working through Turkey, even though they're not friends necessarily of the Kurds. How they react to what the Kurdish people are doing will be critical to establishing what the future of Syria looks like.
Just fantastic insight. We appreciate you, Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb and Ryan Mauro. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a great Sunday.